This week we are making chocolate crinkles. Last year I put them in everybody's cookie box that I gave out for Christmas, which was immediately followed by them telling me how good it was and that they wanted the recipe. So here you go. These are not a cookie that I see a lot in Christmas stuff, but I don't know why, because they're so good. And they're covered in powdered sugar, which is basically the secret ingredient to making everything look Christmassy. The recipe that I use is a very old written recipe, so I can't give you guys a link to it in the description like I usually do, but instead I will type out the recipe in the description so at least you can copy and paste it if you would like to make them at home. They're kind of a cross between a brownie and a cookie because they're like soft and fudgy like a brownie is, but obviously they're in like cookie shape and they have a slight little like crisp like a sugar cookie when you bite into it. So they're very good. If you like brownies and cookies, you'll like these. Let's go. These cookies can be mixed up in a stand mixer or by hand. We're going to start with 2 cups of sugar, half a cup of vegetable oil, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and 4 ounces of melted and cooled unsweetened chocolate, mixing on low until incorporated. Then we'll mix in 4 eggs one at a time. This is easy to do when you have a stand mixer going on low while you add them, but you know, sometimes you just have those days when your hands don't want to cooperate with you and you have fumble fingers and make a mess of things. Oh well, it happens. Once the eggs are added, we'll add the dry ingredients in the form of 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and a half teaspoon of salt. Once mixed all the way, you'll end up with a semi-stiff batter that resembles delicious fudginess. And it smells great too. Then cover the dough and let it rest in the fridge for at least 3 hours up to a few days. You can also freeze the dough for 1 to 2 months. I like to press a small piece of plastic wrap into the top of the cookie dough to prevent ice crystals from forming if I'm sticking it in the freezer. And then I write with a dry erase marker on the lid. I write the name of the cookie, the date I made the dough, and the temperature and time it would need to be baked for so that future Michelle doesn't have to look it up or try to remember. When you're ready to bake, preheat the oven to 375. Before these guys head to the oven though, we're going to roll them in about a teaspoon-sized ball and then roll them in powdered sugar. As I'm waiting for the oven to get to temperature, I want to mention the importance of letting your oven get all the way up to the correct temperature. I made a mention of this in a previous video from last year on the cookie series that I did, which I will put a link to in the description below if you want more details about each element of cookie baking. But I want to mention it here because these only spend 10 minutes in the oven, which means if they're not at the right temperature, that's going to affect how they bake. If you have an older oven like I do, it probably takes it a couple extra minutes to heat up all the way, even when it beeps that it's ready to go. I know that mine, I give it an extra like 3 to 5 minutes depending on how hot I'm putting it at. If I'm putting it at a higher temperature like 450 for sourdough baking, I'll let it heat up an extra like 3-4 minutes before I put the bread in there because I want to make sure that it's actually at that temperature. There are a couple ways around this if you have a newer oven with a more accurate temperature gauge, or you can actually buy little temperature gauges that you put inside the oven that you can peek in and see that it's actually at that temperature. It'll vary from oven to oven, but the more that you bake with your oven, the better you'll be able to have an idea of how long it takes. But the reason that I wanted to mention this in reference to cookie baking is that most cookies only spend 7 to 12, maybe 14 or 15 minutes in the oven, which is a really short period of time. So if they're only in there for that short period of time and they're at the wrong temperature, they're not gonna cook all the way. If your oven is still coming up to temperature, that means it's not hot enough, which means they'll have to spend longer in the oven, and the longer the cookies spend in the oven, the more they spread, they'll get thinner and then burn. And you'll have more of a sweet cracker than a cookie. So just be patient and make sure that your oven is all the way up to temperature before you put the cookies in the oven. Once the oven is preheated, they'll bake for 10 to 12 minutes, or when almost no indentation remains when you gently press the center with a finger. Remove them from the cookie sheet and let them cool on a wire rack until you just can't wait to try them anymore. Ta-da! Really a fairly super easy cookie, too. For your consideration this year, the chocolate crinkle. If you like this video or you learned something, give it a like. If you'd like to learn more, subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!